Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at OD. Before we jump into the video, I just wanted to say if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things, it really helps. And if you want to see more content into the future, please consider clicking the Patreon link down below and going to my Patreon, signing up for coaching, or just supporting me in general for that $5 or $10 a month. It really helps because for whatever reason, YouTube has not monetized my channel. So I make absolutely no money for making all this content. So in order to keep up making content in the future, if you guys really like it and you want to see more of it, please consider supporting if you can. Now that we got that out of the way, let's jump back to the video. So I call this hero OD because this hero's name has been changed like 4 times and the hero's been reworked even more times than that. So we'll see if this guide has to be remade in like, a few months here, if this hero gets changed a lot because it's becoming more popular. So that's why I'm making a guide for this hero. But it's a very interesting and weird hero, probably one of the oddest heroes in the game and always has been. It seems like this hero is either completely terrible or way too overpowered and it just is very annoying to play against. So how do we think about OD and what position does OD play? Well, OD has traditionally been a mid hero, but actually recently it has transitioned more to an offlane hero. But regardless, I think it still plays kind of the same way. So we're just going to focus on that version regardless of whether it's mid or offlane. And the hero mainly does 2 things. First, it has this kind of like setup, aggressive tower push save ability with its astral imprisonment. So basically what you can do is you can astral an enemy, you can set up on them to try to pick off, to kill them, so on and so forth, or you can astral an ally to save them, and so on and so forth as well. So that kind of happens very early on into the game and then transitions throughout the entire game, but really you start out as a tower pushing setup hero. And then once you get some items, you get more attack speed and these kinds of things, then you can transition more to like a right-clicking carry that just blows people up and bursts people down with pure damage and magic damage from your right clicks and from your ult. So it's kind of this weird in between where you're not just like a right click carry kind of hero, but you're also not just like a utility hero. You're kind of a mix of the two, and it's just a matter of how much you can transition out of the utility into more of a right click hero without losing that utility in the game. So it's very interesting, a very interesting hero. This hero doesn't really have a lot of, I don't know, it's hard to say like counters or weaknesses or strength. It's just a very interesting hero in that way. Now, one of the weaknesses would be, with the way that you play this hero, one of the weaknesses would be a hero that can evade your setup or get out of your setup. So you astral somebody, they can just instantly get away. But there's ways to kind of counter that, but that's one weakness that the hero does have. If you can get away very quickly, then it's not great to play the hero because that setup portion just isn't going to work. The hero also is not super strong early, but you can one-on-one mid people. Like if you're going mid, it can be fairly strong, but just in the side lane, it's not going to be the best early on, so you could get ganked, you could get run at. The other thing is if you can't transition with items because you don't farm super quickly. I think farming is pretty much the hardest thing on this hero now. It used to be something you could actually do, you could farm, but now farming is very hard. You don't farm very well, you don't push lanes, you don't do anything, so you just have to be aggressive, look for kills, look for pickoffs, look to push towers, and then transition with those items into the later portion of the game to do more right-click damage and those things. So basically, the weakness of the hero is if you can't get aggressive, if you don't have a good laning stage, you can't get pickoffs, you can't coordinate with your team, then your transition into the later portion of the game with items that allow you to right-click and do more damage, that's just not going to come to fruition. It's just not going to come about. So that's kind of the weakness of the hero. Otherwise, the hero seems to be one of those heroes that's either really good or really bad, like almost in every game. That's kind of why it's so weird. That's why it's been changed, because if it's good, it's almost good all the time. If it's bad, it's just bad all the time. So that's sort of how OD works. So now that we understand the philosophy of OD behind it a little bit, we can jump into the abilities and see how they work. So now that we understand OD in general, we can take a look at his abilities and see how he's able to be that kind of weird hero that transitions from a utility pushing hero to like a right-click carry later in the game, while also not really having too much farming ability in the early games. That's why you have to like push towers, get pickoffs, all those kinds of things. But I'll show you that as we go. So the first ability I'm actually going to look at is Astral Imprisonment. And this is because this is actually the ability that this hero is kind of focused and centered around, at least at this point in time. So basically what you do here is you just click on an enemy and you can just click it and use it, and it just imprisons the enemy, kind of like a stun, just like a weird pseudo stun. You can see it says banished, and after the enemy comes out of the banishment, they take damage. Now, that's not the only thing this does. It also steals mana. So you can see I have this buff here that I stole mana from the axe, and I can do this and I steal mana again. And that's important because it synergizes with the rest of his abilities. Now, this is clearly a good setup. It's kind of like a pseudo stun. So you can Astral Imprison somebody, you can go on them, then you can set up a stun afterwards, like Marana Arrow or something. That's really good for this ability. But the other thing you can do is you can actually Astral your allied creeps, which you don't really do very often, or your allied heroes, which is important because it's also like a pseudo save. So you can save people in Chrono, you can save people from other kind of abilities, or if they're getting gone on, like your carry, so on and so forth. So it's very, very important to understand that as well. So that's Astral. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but it's a very good ability because it has not only damage, it has a kind of pseudo stun, but it also steals mana and has a certain duration for that buff as well. Now, I'm going to skip over these other two abilities. I'm going to talk about the ultimate because this ultimate synergizes directly with this mana steal. And what it does is it has a cast range and it goes in an AoE and you just cast it in that AoE. And it has a very loud noise and an animation. And it does damage in the AoE based on, there's a like base damage here we can see, but it also does damage based on the mana difference multiplier of 0.4 we see there between you and the enemy hero. So that's why it's very good to have this Astral that steals mana, because not only are you getting more mana, but the enemy is losing mana, and then your ultimate does more damage. This is basically how you can use this hero as, you know, you're gaining more mana through team fights or whatever, and then you use your ultimate, it just blows people up. It's kind of like Anti-Mage, just a little bit different. It's not necessarily about, you know, how much mana they have missing. It's more like max mana of you versus them. So it's a little bit different than the Anti-Mage ultimate, but still similar kind of concept. So that's those two abilities. Now I'm going to go back to the Arcane Orb. So this is a right-click damage enhancement ability, kind of like other ones like Drow's, Frost Arrows, and those kinds of things. The difference is here is this does pure damage. So you can see I have this. This is my normal attack. Just a little kind of, a little thing comes out, like a little ball of light. But then if I right-click this and I'm using my Arcane Orb, it's a big orb that comes out. So you can tell the difference there. It also makes a little bit of a different noise. Now the big thing with this ability is that it does pure damage. So it's a pure damage right click. This is something very unique to this ability, and it's very, very good. But it also does pure damage based on the mana pool. So you can see there's a mana pool to damage. That's another reason why it synergizes really well with Astral Imprisonment, is that based on your current mana pool that you've astraled people with, and so on and so forth, now you're doing more damage because of the mana pool. It also has a mana cost that it says current mana cost, so there's 257 right there, but it's also adjusted as well. So it's very interesting to keep that in mind based on the mana. Now I have free spells turned on, but we can see as I'm using more mana, the mana cost is changing slightly. So it's something where you can almost always cast Arcane Orb, even if you have very little mana. And the reason why this is important is because we can go to the passive ability, the last one that I haven't talked about yet, Essence Flux. So Essence Flux is basically just a passive ability that every time you cast an ability, you can restore a certain amount of mana. We can see it goes up as you level it up. So there's a 30% chance to restore X amount of your mana pool with every time you cast an ability. That's your ultimate, that's an Astral, but that's also Arcane Orb. So you can see here, as I just right-click this enemy, this dummy target here, I'm losing mana, but then every once in a while, Essence Flux will kick in and I will just regain mana. So that's really good for this hero because not only do you not have to have sustain, but you don't really have to worry about mana in general in the game, and you can constantly be restoring mana. But the thing is, obviously you want to get more points in Essence Flux so that this doesn't become an issue, and it's a little bit of a chance issue as well. So it is something to keep in mind that until you max this out, you might have some mana problems. It's a little bit luck, but it does help, you know, synergize with the rest of your abilities. And we can see how my mana does go down, but then it eventually comes back up once I get one proc. So one proc really helps. So that is Essence Flux. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Passive ability, but obviously synergizes with the rest of his abilities. So those are all of Odie's abilities, but you can see how I have Meteor Hammer here. And that's because Meteor Hammer is actually core on this hero. You rush Meteor Hammer because you want to get Meteor Hammer as soon as possible. And that's because this is how you set up ganks by yourself. You don't even need that second hero to stun or anything like that after your Astral. Once you get this Meteor Hammer, because basically what you do is you cast this on them, and then you can Meteor Hammer, and so that the Meteor Hammer lands right after the Astral is done, and now they're taking damage over time from the Meteor Hammer. They were slightly stunned. Now you can use your, Arcane Orb to do damage to them. Potentially you can even Sanity's Eclipse during that duration, so on and so forth. And so the way to do this, there's actually a little bit of skill involved, is that when you click Astral over the hero, and it says Banished, basically you want to start channeling your Meteor Hammer around the H. So you can see it goes to H. Now I can click it, And this timing is just about perfect. Now, it's not exactly perfect. I think you can kind of start it right before the H, but it's right around the H. If you time it like right at the H or right after, you're going to pretty much be able to stun almost anybody. Now, if there's a hero like, let's say, Ember Spirit or some other kind of hero, Puck, but Puck's really hard. It's almost impossible to get it on Puck because he can just use his ability to, phase away. But any kind of hero that has any kind of jump or blink, you want to be able to try to time it a little bit better. But if you cast it too early, like we see, I just casted it there, it will fall and completely miss because the Astral will not pop before the hammer lands. So it is one thing that you need to keep in mind. Obviously, if you have something like an Ember that can escape, it's going to be harder to time it, but it's probably better to time it a little bit later, make them screw up, than to try to, miss it completely. So keep that in mind. The other thing that this does, obviously, is it clears creep waves. So you can use it on the creep waves here. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It allows you to creep, push creeps. This is pretty much the only thing that allows you to farm in the game. It's why you buy it, because there's no real other ability that allows you to farm. This does single target damage. It used to do AoE damage, but it doesn't anymore. This also single target damage, and until you get mass essence flux, you can't really spam your abilities. But the other thing that it does is it obviously allows you to push towers. So not only can you, once you hit 6, or once you get just Meteor Hammer in general, you can actually, get aggressive on enemies and pick them off, but then you can also use this ability to just line it up on the tower there. You can cast it out of range of the tower. It hits the tower, and now you can see it does damage to the tower. So the main thing you're going to be doing on this hero is rushing Meteor Hammer and then using your Astral to set up to kill people or to push towers. So that's the main way you're going to get farm, take over map control, and really this hero can become a huge menace. As soon as you get an early Meteor Hammer timing, it's going to be very, very hard to deal with you unless you have heroes that can get out from under that Astral Meteor Hammer combo, especially supports. You can kill almost any support in the game, but you can even kill carries and things like that as well, especially when you combine Sanity's Eclipse once you hit 6, and any kind of arcane or pure damage that you're going in and clicking there. Now, I will say, keep in mind, the last thing I'm going to say about this combination is the duration of Astral Imprisonment does increase with levels. So if you actually get Meteor Hammer before you max this out, you're going to have to cast Meteor Hammer almost instantly when you Astral, because obviously you can see there 3.25 to 4 at the last level. This channels for, I believe, I've successfully channeled blah, blah, blah. What is the channel time? Channel duration, 2.5 seconds we see there. And then landing time, another 5 seconds. So it's 3 seconds. So this 3.25, after you cast this, you're almost going to want to instantly cast Meteor Hammer in order to land it on the enemy after the Astral. Otherwise, once it hits level 4, that's when you need to kind of line it up with the H. So just keep that in mind based on the timings there. So that's pretty much OD. That's basically how OD works. And then from there, you honestly just build normal items. You build BKB, you build things that you can right-click faster, you just do more damage, kind of like a right-click hero. But if you don't gank, if you don't take towers, you're not going to get the farm to be able to transition like that into the later portion of the game. Now, the last couple things I will talk about, the Ag Scepter, it just allows you to be more of a utility hero because basically you get 2 Astral Imprisonments. This helps you set up or save a lot more. So keep that in mind. It's very important. It's very good in that way. And then the other thing that you can get as well is the Shard. So we'll just, I don't think the Shard, oh yeah, the Shard's right here. So the Shard is also important because it allows allies to basically walk when they're Astral Imprisonment. So you can see here, I Astral myself. I'm actually able to walk away, which is really, really important as a good save. It's a very, very underrated save. It's one of those things that obviously you don't get a lot of gold, so it's, whether or not you really want to buy this, but in a lot of games, it will be very good once you can get this. So keep that in mind. That is how the Agnum Shard works. Now, I will say the Astral Imprisonment also allows you, when you get the Ags, to do AoE damage, to like farm and stuff, but that's not really the best consideration. It does speed up your farm, but it's honestly more for the save and the double Astral to help you get more mana and those kinds of things in the later portion of the game. So just keep that in mind. So that's OD. Those are all of OD's abilities. That's how to combo them together. Obviously, you can just Astral somebody. You can Meteor Hammer. You can click away, blow them up, and there you go. Axe is dead. Very simple, very straightforward. That's how you use OD. That's how you play OD. It can be very annoying to deal with. I'm sure a lot of you know who have ever played against an OD. It can be a very, very annoying hero. Very hard hero to beat. Very powerful hero, especially once you get items and you get a good Meteor Hammer timing. So that's OD. Those are his abilities. Now let's jump into a game and see how he's played. So now we're jumping into a game here of Seb playing off-lane OD, and I chose to, do the off-lane OD because I think mid is pretty much the same as offlane. It's just that offlane is a little bit slower. It's a little bit more about the timing and getting a good laning stage. It's a little bit harder. OD mid is kind of super easy. You just kind of lane normally and then get your meme hammer and then just like try to kill people or push the tower. Really not that hard. So I think offlane is obviously the main one that's being played as well. So obviously you see that here they're tri-laning because OD is actually kind of strong level 1. He's not super strong against certain matchups because he doesn't really offer much utility, doesn't really do anything. He's relatively squishy. He's a ranged hero. You know, he's not super fast or anything like that. But level 1, you can get this Arcane Orb that does pure damage that helps you secure last hits and also do a significant amount of damage to the enemy. So it is largely reliant on your support to see, you know, are they being aggressive or, you know, do they have aggressive level 1 abilities? Can they, you know, tank the enemy's abilities and these kinds of things? It's all about matchups there and whether your support is going to be aggressive. We see there, obviously, both supports come bottom level 1 to get that first blood. So that obviously makes it so he can be very aggressive there. But it's largely about your support and the enemy matchup and these kinds of things, whether or not you can get aggressive with that level 1. Because otherwise, this is all you really offer is a right click every 6 seconds that does a good amount of damage. And usually you're just going to use this to secure range groups. Then level 2, you're going to get Astral Imprisonment usually pretty much almost every time. And then this combo makes you offer or gives you a little bit more utility where now not only can you get kills, but you can also, you know, save people, save yourself, these kinds of things, astral somebody at the very end, all this kind of stuff. We see they almost take down the Medusa again. Actually, they do with the last Skywrath hit. So they obviously are tri-laning here, so this does make it a little bit weird, but I think this is just similar to how OD plays in the beginning. But mainly, I think the reason why they are tri-laning here is because, I don't know, maybe, I mean, Luna's farming jungle, so it doesn't seem like it's that good of a thing here. It might be a little bit of a troll game, I will say, but basically, this is kind of how OD works. OD, basically, what you want to do with this hero is you just want to get your farm, be aggressive where you can, and then try to get your hammer timing as soon as possible. So you see, he bought a little bit of regen. He bought a Quelling Blade in order to be able to lane, but otherwise he's just rushing the hammer. So that's pretty much what you want to do. You don't even want to buy boots, treads, anything like that. You'll get that after your hammer because the hammer is just the important timing because it's everything for this hero. Because once you get that and you have some levels in your astral, you can kill almost any hero on the map. You can really push towers really, really effectively, all these kinds of things. So that's the main way that you're going to think about OD in the lane. Otherwise, you're honestly just passively farming. You're just kind of using your Arcane Orb and your Astral Imprisonment to get aggressive whenever possible, but otherwise you're just trying to secure your CS and these kinds of things. And until you get Essence Flux, that is one thing. You don't want to waste all of your mana before getting at least 1 point in this, because it is very important that you have at least 1 point in this so you can start getting mana back in the lane, because you're going to be using a lot of mana early on, or you're not going to be able to really buy regen unless you get the mana regen item, but usually you want to buy Ring of Health first so you can sustain the lane. So that's very important too. Because you're rushing this meme hammer, you're not buying a lot of regen, you want to buy Ring of Health first. So getting 1 point in Essence Flux is important as well to at least sustain a little bit. But we can see how just a little bit of right clicks here are really effective at zoning the OD out, because the OD really does not have very many defensive capabilities in terms of like armor or I mean, the armor's kind of high, but like HP pool and speed, move speed, these kinds of things, you're pretty squishy. You can get gone on, so just keep that in mind. Otherwise, you just are trying to get your Meteor Hammer timing as soon as possible, and that's pretty much straightforward, pretty simple. That's how you play OD in the lane. So now the OD got his Meteor Hammer timing. You can see as soon as he gets it, he either looks for a kill or looks to push the wave. And basically what happens is, because the enemy knows how OD works, they just run away. They just leave the lane, basically. They have pretty much just abandoned this lane because they know, as a Medusa or Nature's Prophet, all these heroes, there's pretty much no one in the game right now that can deal with this Meteor Hammer timing with a level 3 Astral. So basically, he now has a free lane to himself because he just survived. And obviously he got some kills and stuff with that tri-lane there, but basically he just survived the laning stage until now he gets his Meteor Hammer, and now it's just all about pushing the lane. And if anybody shows up, he's going to easily kill them with his Astral, with his Meteor Hammer, with his ult, and his Arcane Orb. So that's just pretty much what will happen. In your games, the enemy might not be smart enough to leave, and you'll just be able to get a ton of kills once you get your hammer timing. But otherwise, you know, you can see he already used, like, he basically used his hammer once here to clear the creep wave, and then he used it the next time to get the tower down. You'll probably see him use it again as soon as the creeps push to try to kill the wave. The other thing that's important is to try to, if you can, you see he doesn't do that here, which I think is a little bit of a mistake, but that's fine, is that sometimes you want to try to basically hit the tower and the creeps all at the same time with the same Meteor Hammer. I think that's also very important, which is something that he like almost did. I think he was trying to time it, but it was just a little bit too early and they didn't get there in time, because it's very important to do that so you can get the most out of your Meteor Hammer usage. But this is pretty much just how you use this hero. Once you get your Meteor Hammer, in most lanes, you're just going to be able to dominate. You can see just constantly using it off cooldown to get this tower, and you should be able to get this tower before 10 minutes, maybe at most before 11 or 12. And that's pretty much how to transition out of the laning stage into the early game with OD. So now I jumped ahead only like a couple minutes here because I just wanted to show you this sequence. Basically, they came down and ganked him because he was kind of alone, and then he just came back and immediately went to kill this tower. And then as soon as he kills bottom tower, look at what he does. He transitions to going through the jungle here, and the only real reason that he fights them is because they were there. But you can see what he does. Immediately, as soon as bottom's done, he goes and hammers the mid tower to take the tower, because this is exactly what you want to be doing on OD. Basically, the whole point of your hero right now is to push the towers and get map control, and then if anybody shows alone ever, you just kill them with Astral, because you're so strong right now. It's very hard for heroes to deal with you like pre-15 minutes, pre-getting one item that's good, unless they bring like the entire team. So you can see how they're already invading the triangle. They're already taking insane map control because this OD, he just survived the laning stage till his hammer, and now it's so hard for the enemy to do anything. He's also giving so much space to this Luna and just pushing in the waves constantly. They have both the towers, even though the Luna was like alone and like basically his game was completely screwed, they're still able to have such a good time basically 100% because of Seb on his OD. You see how he's just able to like run at the triangle and just be like, yeah, there's nothing you can do with me or do about me right now. If I just find anybody alone, I'm going to go to Astral and hammer. Now, obviously, he overextended a little bit there. He saw them bottom while he was in the triangle, and that's why he got aggressive, but then he just like stayed there while like all 5 of the heroes were rotating and the bat eventually kills him. So that obviously is not something you want to do, but this is just a good example of how OD is so strong early, and especially if you push all the towers and you find somebody alone, you can pick them off. And the reason why that was not a very good play is because all of the heroes on the enemy team were together. You don't really want to fight people 5-on-5 at this point till you get BKB, till you get something else. You really want to find people alone as OD, and you can see that every time they try to team fight, he is still pretty squishy, so it's not the best to be, team fighting at this point in time until you get, Blink or BKB or whatever other items you're trying to get. But you can also see, the other thing to keep in mind that I'll just tell you before I go ahead is that all tier 1 towers have no backdoor protection, so you can really just kind of backdoor them and rush kill them, all 3 tier 1 towers early on in the game. So that's what you want to be doing with OD. So that's kind of how to transition to the mid game. And you can see, even despite giving Luna like no game because of how strong he is and the fact that Puck did pretty well mid, they're able to just take Roche pre 16 minutes, which is really good. So that's kind of how to transition to the mid game with OD. Now I jumped into a different game of Seb playing OD, because the last one he kind of just like farmed a lot, because I mean, you do want to farm with Meteor Hammer like off cooldown constantly, but he split pushed, he farmed a lot, and his team just kind of won the game for him. At the end of the day, it wasn't really that hard. There wasn't that much else to show you in that game. He kind of almost played alone. But now I want to show you this game where he gets his BKB time, because BKB is super important on this hero, because it basically is what allows you to team fight. So before, in the other game, I was pretty much saying that you don't really want to team fight with this hero without BKB, because honestly, it's not great. You get stunned, you get locked down, you can't channel your Meteor Hammer, these kinds of things. But then, as soon as you get BKB, this is the signal to start fighting as a team, as a 5-man, because now this is a perfect opportunity to go in, pop BKB. You can get all of your spells off. You can right-click with your Arcane Orb, all this kind of stuff. You can do insane amounts of damage. And this is now the transition from your kind of setup, your split push, your pick off to carry, because the BKB is such an important timing. And then from here, you can kind of get other stuff. A lot of different items. You can get Ags, you can get more right-click items, you can get AC, maybe not AC, but you can get like, you can even get Shivas if you wanted. You could get Moon Shard. I know a lot of people get Moon Shard, Ags, Moon Shard, these kinds of things are just options. Or once it's 20 minutes, you can get the Ags Shard if you want to help save people if you think that's an important part of the game. There's just a lot of options after this, but I think BKB is super important because it's what allows you to fight. In the same way, though, you have to be careful because BKBs on the enemy team are also extremely important, because kind of the basic counter to OD is BKB. So someone can pop BKB to get out of the Meteor Hammer channel basically pick-off thing. They can also not get clicked. You know, you can't click them anymore with Arcane Orb because it doesn't pierce BKB. This doesn't pierce BKB, all of this kinds of stuff. It's not dispellable. It also doesn't pierce BKB. It's just a magical damage type here on Sanity's Eclipse. So BKB also counters OD. So it's kind of tit for tat. Once you get BKB, that's when you can start fighting, but also be careful of enemy BKBs as well, because you don't want to get caught with your pants down where you're popping your BKB and then you can't dish out any damage. So just keep that in mind. It is very, very important. But we can see now, once he got his BKB, they can just rotate through the entire map as 5, and it's so hard to deal with this hero, especially when the enemy has a PA who just isn't ready to fight yet. The PA doesn't have BKB yet, so the PA just cannot show up to anything right now because this OD is just so powerful. So that's how to think about OD transitioning into the later portion of the game. And honestly, from here, there's not much else to talk about. I think this is pretty much the last clip I'm going to show you, because basically from here, it's all about positioning, saving people with Astral, setting up with Astral, and getting your other items up to make sure you can carry as OD. Now, obviously, the thing about it is, I don't think showing you a great example or an example of astraling somebody is the best, because to save somebody, because it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. If somebody's chronoed, you want to astral them. If somebody is getting gone on, you want to astral them. If you can pick somebody off like we're seeing here, you want to astral them. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. But do keep in mind that obviously you don't want to astral people in kind of a griefing manner. So that is one thing to practice on this hero. It's very important. It's not something I can necessarily show you, like when not to astral, but it's very important that you don't grief your team by astraling an enemy that's already, you know, stunned, or that's already getting gone on, these kinds of things. You want to use your astral sparingly to save or to initiate onto somebody that is not yet caught out. So it's very important to know that that's how you need to use astral, because if you're not very experienced with OD, you might use your W spell in the wrong way. Other than that, that's honestly really the only skill that is required later on in the game. Otherwise, you just fight with your team, you pop your BKB when you're team fighting, you use your hammer on people, you use your hammer to push, and then you just basically deal insane amounts of damage in the team fight and blow people up when the enemy doesn't have BKBs pop. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and we can see how they're absolutely dominating the game. They don't even need OD because of how far ahead they were. And actually, they were losing this game early. It's just that once BKB came online on OD, they were able to sweep through the map, and just their timing is so much better now. And that's the other thing about OD. OD just has such insane timings with this Meteor Hammer and then early BKB. It's just crazy. You can just take over the entire game with this hero. So that's pretty much how to play BKB, or how to play BKB, how to play OD, especially once you get your BKB, but just in the game in general. If you guys enjoyed this guide, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. As always, I may have to make a new guide for OD in the not too distant future because they constantly change this hero, but that's fine. This is pretty much how you play this hero for now. And as always, guys, join the Discord below. If you want to request a replay review, I do streams every Friday. If you want to support me, just consider supporting me, please. If you haven't already, go to the Patreon below, request coaching, or just support me in general, because I have no monetization right now through Twitch or YouTube. So that would really help me be able to keep doing videos and content like this. So as always, guys, thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.